All right, the first book that I read this month was actually my 5-star. It was my favorite book, which was Marrying Winterborne, but no, yes. Hello, everybody. My name is Kelsey, and we're about to get very, very nerdy with my July wrap up. We're here to talk about the books that I read in the month of July. And July is a weird month because, I look back and I read 6 things, and I'm looking at my ratings, and they're pretty normal. And, the books that I read are pretty, I think highly of them. But I just think overall, when I look back on my July reading, I feel meh about it. So I don't really know. Actually, it actually might be because I ended the month with, a really chunky book that was just meh. And that might have colored a lot of my thoughts towards the month. Either way, July was fine. There's nothing wrong with July, but I think back on it as a meh month. But that is neither here nor there. So grab a nice beverage of choice. I have my iced coffee here that's no longer iced. And we are going to dive into the stats and the books that I read this last month. So, like I mentioned, I read 6 things, which was over 2,007 pages with about 57 hours listened. And that was 2 audiobooks, 1 ebook, and 3 mixed. The age categories, just like the previous month, all adult books. So all 6 books were adult. Genres, relatively normal for me. We had 3 romance, 1 fantasy, 1 historical fiction, and 1 mystery thriller. And ratings, again, pretty normal. We had 1 5-star, 4 4-stars, and 1 3-star. So the first book that I read in the month of July was actually my favorite book. It was my 5-star, and that is Marrying Winterborne by Lisa Kleypas, which is the second in the Ravenhill series. I gave this one 5 stars. I've already mentioned that. Trigger warnings for this book. We have mentions of suicide. It's all historical, but it plays a big part in one of our characters' backstories, as well as migraines. Our main female lead, Helen, suffers from migraines, and so you're kind of in her head when they happen. This is a continuation from the first book in this series. Basically, in the first book, just so you have an idea, we follow our main couple. This guy inherits a new land. He's a Ravenel, and he also inherits taking care of the widow of his cousin, who used to be this duke. And she has married into the family, which has 3 daughters. And so it's their relationship, but in it, you kind of see the beginning of the relationship with the eldest sister, Helen. And she takes center stage in this book, and she is engaged to a guy named Reese, and it kind of falls apart a little bit in the first book, and she comes into the second book, and they figure out what they need to do to get married, because she's very interested in this marriage. And she is very shy, very shy. But in this book, we're now in her head, and so while she's still shy, she still kind of has that personality. There's a quiet strength to her that I really appreciated reading, because she does come into her own, but it isn't a complete 180 as far as the character that we have come to know in the first book. Because while the first book wasn't in her perspective, you did get to see her. She played a big part in that story. And so having her take center stage here and see what that means and how that, how her brain works is fascinating, because a lot of the story is a mystery, because Helen has some discoveries throughout this book about her heritage, about her backstory or her background, and through that, she thinks she is concerned about this relationship, and if he can accept these things about her. So she's got all these secrets. She's discovering who she is a little bit and what that means, and so it was very interesting to see her in this situation, because it's just different. I feel like I'm trying to be vague on purpose so I don't spoil anything, but I feel like when I read something similar to this, where a main character is discovering their backstory a little bit, it is usually the man, the main male lead, that does it. And so to have her take this story on, I think, is really interesting. But this book has it all. I mean, there's romance, there's sexual tension between her and the main male lead, Reese. You've got he's a very rugged, pull himself up by his bootstraps kind of character. He originally was marrying her because she was a lady and he wanted that prestige. He's in charge of he owns and operates a department store, and like one of the most well-known department stores, Winterborne. And he is an immigrant. He's from Ireland, I want to say. I might have made that part up, but he's different. He comes from a not wealthy family. He comes from a different culture, and Welsh. He's Welsh. Sorry, it just connected with me because throughout this book she learns Welsh a little bit, and like the language, and it's very cute. Either way, so he has a very rugged exterior, and to see him thaw, still be rugged, still be the person that like we know he is, but to see him thaw throughout this book was really fun to read. So their romance is perfect, and any issue that they have, like any conflict in this book, is not because of miscommunication, which is usually what you see. So like their relationship in the last book had some issues. Like it just kind of started at the end of the last book, and it had some issues because of miscommunication. And this book starts with her walking in and being like, "Here is what happened. Let's figure this out." And so that's not the problem. The problem is that she's not sure he can live with who she is, and so based on the information that she's found about her parentage, and she is, I don't know, like it's just that's not the issue. Um, and I will say, even though the ending felt a little rushed at times, it did feel a little like happy, perfect little bow on some conversations. I feel like some people were accepting of certain things much quicker than they normally would have been. I didn't mind that because I love these characters so much. So, like, yes, that is a flaw of the story. I personally didn't care that it was a flaw. Like, I recognized that it was a flaw, but I was like, this book is so good. These characters are so good. It's still a 5-star for me. So, yeah, I thought it was very well done. I thought it was one of the better historical romances that I've read, and I just really liked their relationship. And I went into this one with such high hopes that I was very worried it wasn't going to live up to it, but it did. It did, and I really enjoyed the story. Alright, the next one I picked up was an Audible original audiobook type thing, and it's called Mrs. Wickham. It's by Sarah Page. I gave this one 4.5 stars. It's like a 2.5-hour audiobook, full cast recording, and it follows the story of Lydia Bennet, who is the youngest sister of the Bennet sisters from Pride and Prejudice. And in that like original text, she gets married and kind of shipped off. And she's kind of one of those, oh, she made her own bed, they've got a lie in it now. And so this is the what happens next. And you see a lot of that with her character. Like as far as reimaginings and retellings, or, you know, things inspired by this story specifically, there's quite a few out there that go, you know, what happens to Lydia and Wickham next? Like, what is the next step for them? And it's usually not a very positive one. This one is significantly more positive. It doesn't start that way, but it does end that way, and in a more positive note. And while, is that believable? Probably not. I really liked seeing it because there are so many out there that kind of tell it how you think it's going to be, where like it's just going to be a really rough life for the two of them. This one makes them talk about their issues and makes them figure things out. And I like seeing those elements. So it is like very much a taking liberties with the characters. I mean, that's what you do when you take, you know, a classic and you reimagine some of the stuff with it. But I don't know, there was something about this one specifically that I really liked. So it is full cast, which is fantastic, and I really enjoyed that. It's got sound effects, it's got just a lot of stuff in it that I never would have really thought as far as plot and future for Lydia. So it was cool to see that happen, and it was really cool to see another side to the character of Wickham, which is just a straight up villain in the first book, or I guess in the original Pride and Prejudice. So this one wasn't like, there's not a lot to it, there's not a lot of substance to it, it's just a good time, but it's definitely one that I would recommend if you were a fan of Pride and Prejudice or Jane Austen, just to see kind of like a what happens next, knowing that like there's some liberties taken with these characters and that it's just a good fun time. Like it's not there to make you actually believe like this is what could happen with these characters. It's just fun. And that's kind of what I needed. I was in between books. I wasn't sure what I wanted to pick up, and this was quick, and I just threw it on. I'd had it in my Audible library for a very long time, and it was one of the better ones, which is funny because there was a book that I read that did the same thing with Mary's character, and it was took a lot of liberties and it did things that I didn't expect, and I didn't believe would happen, and like I hated that one. So I don't know why. Maybe because it was shorter. Maybe because it was like a bite-sized story. Maybe because it was told audibly. Like I don't know what it was about this one that and why it worked when like others that have done the same kind of idea didn't work. But it did. So it's fun. Like there's nothing substance-wise to it. It's just kind of fun. I will say just trigger warnings for this one specifically is suicide and mentions of suicide. It's not historical, and it doesn't happen on the page, but like it's kind of a big part of Lydia's plot. A little bit is discovering things. So, yeah, that one's probably one of the bigger content warnings when it comes to that specifically. Next book I picked up was my book club pick, which was One Perfect Couple by Ruth Ware. I gave this one 4 stars. Trigger warnings in this one, we have mentions of suicide and abusive relationships, and I would like star both of those because this book is not what I thought it was going to be, and abusive relationships is a huge part of this plot. So this book follows our main character, Lila, who is a scientist. She studies, I think, diseases in mosquitoes specifically, but she is like in the lab. And her boyfriend, Nico, they've been together for 3 years, I believe, and he is a rising actor. And so he gets approached for the show called One Perfect Couple. It's a reality type TV show where 5 different couples come to this remote island and they basically do competition style things, where they become to see if they are the one true perfect couple. So they go to this desert island. She agrees, and after 2 days there, there's a huge storm, and they get secluded on the island. The boat that has all the crew and the staff members and everybody on it is gone. They're no longer on the island, and so these 5 couples. I think at that point there are 9 people on this island. They're kind of stranded and they're trying to figure out what happens, and then what happens to people's psyche and things like that from there. Things start going terribly wrong and people start ending up murdered. And so it's that story, but it's, like I thought it was going to be one thing. And like, I'm not the biggest fan of, survive on a desert island kind of stories, but like I knew what I was getting into. I really liked the other book that I read by Ruth Ware. It was Turn of the Key. And she has very interesting plots that take turns I'm not expecting. They're very dark. They get very dark very quickly. So like while it's not, I would say this leans more thriller than mystery, and it definitely leans more dark. It never goes into the horror per se. So like it's not too scary, but the fact that it's not too scary and yet the things that happen, at least in the 2 books that I've read, are absolutely horrific is a fascinating combination. So like I'm not going to say I enjoyed this book because like I don't think I did. I gave it 4 stars, but like while reading, I'm not sure I can say I enjoyed my time reading it because like I said, at the core of this story, it's about an abusive relationship and an abusive person and how that stems and kind of ripple effects everything. And so it's rough. And then like what happens when you're stuck on this island with someone like that, and what do you do? How do you survive? And I don't want to say too, like I can't say much because I don't want to spoil anything about this book, but it definitely, like, because that's such a big part of the plot, I wanted to mention it because it is like a big trigger for some people. And if you don't know that going in, you will be so surprised. And so I think it's really interesting because like up until the last chapter, I was guessing. I mean, there's not like a whodunit situation in here. You kind of know what's going on. It's a how do we survive this? How do we get out alive? And also it really comes down to these 4 women and how they are bound by this experience and how they stand up for each other and how they help each other survive. Like it's very interesting. Oh, and also sorry, I think this should also be a little bit of a trigger, possibly a medical trauma situation. One of our main characters is a diabetic, and so that plays a part in her being stuck on this island with only so much insulin. So if that is, I should have put that in triggers. So just kind of know that. I don't know if that counts as medical trauma, but like medical something. I think these characters are fascinating. I think the story is fascinating. I don't think I want to hold on to this book because, like, I'm never going to reread the story again. I'm glad I read it. It was, again, I don't want to say it was a good experience because, like, it was not a fun book to read. I feel the same way as about like The Nightingale that I read by Kristen Hanna. Like, it is not a fun story. I'm glad I read it. I was on the edge of my seat while I was reading it, but like, it's not fun. Like, it is really hard to get through. And while this is not on the same level as far as like calamity wise, it still is, it's a rough story to get through. But you are sitting there second guessing everything. And then there's some information that gets thrown at you at the very last second that like makes you rethink the whole situation. And so I don't know. It was, I'm glad I read it. It was an interesting conversation. Having read this with so many different people and just having everyone talk about it, and just like the things that happened at the end, it's just kind of crazy. It was very twisty and lots of twists and turns. But I'm definitely someone who wants to read more things by Ruth Ware. I currently have 2 books on my TBR, like physical TBR, and then many others that like of hers. Like, she was someone that I never put on a TBR because I thought her books leaned towards the scary and I wasn't sure if they were for me. And then I picked one up for a book club. This book club, actually, it was the very first book that I read for this book club. It was a year ago. And I actually really enjoyed it. It was creepy, but like I knew that going in. So she's definitely an author that like not everything of hers appeals to me, but she's someone I will definitely give a chance to a lot of things that I probably wouldn't normally give a chance to because I like her writing and her characters and her story development. So if you like being on the edge of your seat, if you like second guessing the entire time, if you like a desert reality TV show type situation that goes terribly wrong, this is actually a pretty decent book, and it keeps you on your toes. And like, I flew through this so quickly. I don't know. I'm really glad I read this because I think it's just a fascinating conversation. And like, normally I would not read a story about a desert island or a reality TV show. Like, both of those things put together sounds like a no-no for me. But it worked. And she's an author that like I want to read a lot more from. The next book I picked up was for my Lorraine Heath buddy read, and that is the second book in the Chessman series, which is The Notorious Lord Knightley. This one I gave 4.5 stars. Trigger warnings for domestic abuse. It's all historical. You know, you hear someone's backstory, you learn about them. So this follows Knightley, the Earl of Knightley, but he's called Knightley, and this woman named Regina, and they were previously engaged, and he kind of like walked out of their marriage at the last, like on the day that they were going to get married. And she is a bastard child, basically. Her father had a family, and then he fell in love with an actress and had her. And so like, he kept her very well educated and like treated her like she was one of the ton, but like she's not. And so he was hoping to marry her off to a lord in the hopes of securing a future for her. And Lord Knightley just kind of fell in love from the get-go. And then something happens that you learn throughout the book, and he calls it off. And he thinks, you know, it'll look better if I call it off, and then she can still have a chance at falling for someone. And like, the Ton will, you know, look kindly on her, and it's the total opposite. Like, they look really badly, like they look down on her. So she goes away, and this book comes out, and it's called Lord K, or The Secrets of Lord K, or something like that. And it's unsigned, like it's a published work, and it talks about a relationship with this guy named Lord K, from an anonymous woman. And it's not a surprise that it's Regina and it's about Knightley, but like, everyone assumes it's about Knightley, so the two of them kind of pretend to get along so that people think it's not about them, because it ends with her just kind of being like, look at this douche, basically. And if they pretend to get along, then people will not assume that he is Lord K. Also, she is trying to get married again, and he's hoping to help her find the right person, and so it's their relationship. It's a second chance romance. There's a lot to the story. It's definitely one that, like, I did take a break in the middle of reading this book, and I think this book might have suffered because of that. Like, it didn't get a full 5 because the middle of the book was just kind of meh. But I was talking to the other 2 people that are in this, readathon, read along with me, and or buddy read with me, and they also were like, yeah, kind of dipped in the middle. So I think this book just has a little bit of a dip in the middle. Like, the beginning is very interesting. I like the chemistry. I think the story is fascinating. I haven't read a lot of things like this. And then the end is really good. We learn a lot about our characters because, like, he is hiding some secrets. And she is too, but her secrets are less secret in the sense of, like, we all guess what they were. His secret is not as upfront. And so, like, they have some really real conversations about who they are and their history and, like, stuff with the 2 of them. And so, did the end wrap up rather quickly? Yes, it did. I mean, a lot of historical romances do that. This one wrapped up quicker than I'm used to, but, like, it was still really good. Like, I still really enjoyed it. I kind of, like, the mojo kind of kicked back up in the last 25% of this book. So, like, it's a good book and it ends pretty well. I mean, it got a 4.5 star. There's definitely a little bit of, like, dip in the middle where, like, I don't know if the writing just kind of fell flat, which I don't think is true considering it's Laura Heath and her writing is always amazing. But, like, I don't know. It was just kind of meh. So it was good. I'm glad I read it. I'm excited to see what the third one's going to be about, which is the final book in this trilogy. I have no idea. Like, I don't have a physical copy of it, so I don't even know what it's about. But I love Lorraine Heath's writing. She has amazing characters. They are very fleshed out. They have real substance to them. And I always say that when I mention her books because I think that she's just a really clever writer when it comes to that, because it's so easy, especially in the historical romance world, to just kind of slap some stuff on paper and the stories are good, but the characters might fall flat or they're kind of 2D because of X, Y, and Z. She makes sure that her characters don't do that. She makes sure that they're real characters, they're real people, and you feel that. And so I just really like that about her stories. So that was another good one from her. The next book I picked up was the 8th volume of Cherry Magic by Yu Toyota. I gave this one 4 stars. I honestly don't know what to say about this book that hasn't already been said about this series. I adore this series. I'm obsessed with this series. I want to do nothing but read this series. So I've talked about it a lot, but basically this book starts with, or the series starts with our main character Adachi, who has turned 30 and he's still a virgin. And in this world, if you turn 30 and you're still a virgin, you have magical powers. And so if he touches someone, he discovers that, like, he could read their minds. And so he runs into this guy named Kurosawa, who he works with, and discovers that Kurosawa has a huge crush on him. And so it's the series of him figuring out what that means. Does he have a crush on Kurosawa? Does he like men all of a sudden? He's never been in a relationship. What does that mean? And so it's the 2 of them figuring things out, and then just, like, figuring out normal life things. And so we are 8 volumes in. There are 14 volumes out as of right now. So I'm over halfway. That's halfway, right? Yeah, I'm over halfway. So I'm excited to continue. I'm obsessed with this series. I'm really happy that this series is continuing to be good. I'm thinking of, like, when I read Dreaming Sun a couple of years ago. I started that series and I loved it. I was like 2 or 3 volumes in and it was fantastic. And then it just dipped. Like, the romance took a different side plot and I just did not like where it was going. This one is not doing that. This one is staying good the whole time. And I love these characters and I love seeing them figure out life together. So this is just the next step. I don't even remember specifics about this one. I just know I love these characters. And if you are someone who is very interested in, like, getting into manga, romance manga, this is a relatively good one. I will say there are some things in this book, like, we meet the families in this book, and any issue that people have with these 2 guys dating has nothing to do with the fact that they are 2 guys, which I think is fantastic representation, and I love seeing that. I don't know, like, I think it's really, it's nice to have this world where that the fact that they are 2 men is a conversation in the sense of, like, they're figuring out if they have feelings for men, especially Adachi, but, like, no one questions the fact that they are 2 men together. They question other things. They work together. This relationship is going quicker, or, like, whatever it is. There is never a mention of it being because they are 2 men, which awesome. I love to see it. And the very last book that I read in the month of July, which was the thick one, Caused Me Issues. If you see my most recent vlog, which was a 5-star predictions vlog, you know what it is, and that is Beautiful Nightmares by K.J. Sutton. This is the 4th book in the Fortuna Sworn series. It is over 700 pages long. It is a thick boy. This got 3.5 stars. Trigger warning from this book for torture, gore, sexual trauma, all historical, but it does come up, and transphobia. There's a lot more stuff to it. There's always a content warning in her books, but I think I covered most of it. So just if you're ever curious about stuff, K.J. Sutton always at least in the Fortuna Sworn series, always has a content warning at the beginning of her books. This series follows our main character, Fortuna, who's a nightmare, which basically just means that, like, if she touches you, she can figure out what your greatest fear is, and she can sometimes use that against you. And so she feeds off of fear. And so in the first book, she has a brother who's been missing for 2 years, and he's also a nightmare. And everyone is like, he's dead, it sucks, I know, but we kind of have to move on. And she's like, no, like, I can tell that he's not dead. Like, I need to figure out what's going on. And she runs into a fake man who says, I know what happens, I can help you out, but you gotta marry me. And she's like, fine, I guess. And so she goes to, I believe it's the Unseelie Court. Yes, there's Seelie and Unseelie in this book, and they both play big parts, so I'm trying to remember which one's which. He's Unseelie. And so the first book is that, and then the world just expands a ton. I talked a lot about this book in my vlog because it was just so long and it took me such a long time to get through. This was a slog. Like, there was a lot of parts of this book that it just felt like a filler. And for this to be the 4th out of 6 books, and it to be, at least so far, the biggest book in the series, it should not be the one that feels like a filler. And there are definitely things, I mean, the ending was bad. The beginning was good. I mean, the beginning was hard to get through because of some plot things, but like the beginning kind of kept me on my toes, and the end wrapped up a lot of things. I've noticed with this series, the last like 100 to 150 pages, like all hell breaks loose, and you usually get a lot of information. And that is true partially. I mean, it's not like all hell breaks loose. I think some things got solved quicker than they should have. Felt like she spent so much time doing other things in this book, and then was like, oh crap, I need to wrap this up, and then did it very quickly. So this is not my favorite in the series. I like these characters. I like how it ended because it has me questioning some things, and there are a lot of things in this book that we have come to know over the last 3 books that have come full circle. There are moments that felt like throwaway moments that have come back and are important, and kind of connect some dots for our main character. And I don't know if it's because I spent, like, I think I put a 2-year gap between the 3rd book and this book, which probably could have caused some problems. I don't know if that's what it was, but this was not it for me. I really like these characters, so I mean, like, this is not, just because this one wasn't great doesn't mean I'm not going to continue. I'm definitely going to continue. I own the 5th one, which is about half the size of this book, and then there's the 6th one, which is coming out this year, and then that's the end of the series. So I'm invested in these characters. I'm invested in the romances. Romance, I guess, is more accurate, and it ended in a way that I'm like, oh, things are about to happen. So I'm definitely going to continue. I just think that this is the book where it suffered in the series, which is unfortunate because there's a lot of things plot-wise that kind of gets turned around in this book. Like, there's a lot of things that happen that, like I mentioned, there's a lot of full circle moments in this book. So there's a lot in this book that's important to the overall plot, but the plot of this book was meh. And I feel like for the amount of pages, not a lot happened. So this, unfortunately, that's how I ended my month, was with a not so great book. But then I started August, spoilers, with like an amazing book. I mean, it's not spoilers, you would have seen it. It's the other book that I read in that vlog. But I will talk about more about that in my August wrap up. So that is what my July looked like. I actually had some really good books. I had some very interesting stories. It just kind of ended meh. And like, this book took me 2 to 3 weeks to get through. So considering I had a lot of plans and I got to almost none of them, it happens. So that is a look at my July reading. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, let me know if you've read any of the books that I mentioned down below. And I'd like to know what you picked up in the month of July. Did you have a really, really good read? Did you have a meh month? Tell me some things that you loved reading in July. I always kind of open it up to loved and hated if you need to rant, but like I feel like we need some positivity. I don't know why. Like nothing was bad about this month, but I feel like we need some positivity. So, tell me some of your better books that you read in the month of July. And if you like this video, and I very much hope that you did, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe down below if you want to be part of this awesome growing family. I've also got all my social media down there as well as other fun bookish links. So go check all that out, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!